The paper is soft from being handled too many times. I can feel it trembling between my fingers as the morning light hits it. One of my tiny stories, written on the back of an old grocery receipt. I didn't mean for anyone to read it. Not yet. But this is the page Marlon held up yesterday, smiling like a man who believes ownership comes from possession. In our quiet kitchen, the scent of boiled ginger still lingers, mixing with the dust we haven't had the strength to chase away. People see age as weakness, a soft voice, a slower step. But Thomas and I, we know exactly what's happening to us, even if pretending would be easier. We know that a stranger now carries papers with our names on them, papers we never signed. I can still hear his voice from the day it happened, measured, professional, the kind of tone that tells you he thinks he's already won. The house looked small then, smaller than it ever had since our children left, one by one, until the rooms felt like unanswered questions. And yet, something shifted the moment Ivy stepped into the doorway. I didn't know her well. Just a tenant who kept to herself in the room above the garage. But when she picked up my fallen receipt story and read it aloud, the air changed, like she understood something Marlon never bothered to see. Maybe you know this feeling, the moment you realize someone unexpected sees you more clearly than the people who should have protected you. Have you ever had that happen? Stay with us, because this is the story of how we learned that even the smallest words, written in fear, can become a lifeline, if the right person chooses to hold them. I woke before sunrise, same as every morning since we buried Mila. The March cold settled into my bones as I sat at the kitchen table in my cardigan, a grocery receipt under my palm, pen trembling in my grip. The last time she laughed, it sounded like wind chimes. I wrote that one line before the chest ache stopped me. I folded the receipt into the ceramic bowl that once held keys, now filled with scraps of my handwriting, tiny stories I didn't know what to do with. Behind me, Thomas moved like a ghost with a checklist. Refrigerator opened, closed, stove knobs tested, toaster unplugged, plugged back in. For weeks now, inspecting appliances, tightening faucets, checking locks, an engineer's muscle memory, a way to feel purposeful. Coffee? I asked. Already made? On the counter? I poured a cup and returned. Thomas lowered himself across from me with careful slowness. Any word from the kids? I shook my head, though Carlo had messaged 2 days ago. Still swamped with Singapore, Ma. We'll call when I can. Before that, Beatrice from Vancouver. I just can't get away, you understand? I understood they had lives without us now. That grief weighs more alone. They're busy, Thomas said, convincing himself. I sipped my coffee silently. The knock came after 9, sharp, confident. We exchanged glances. We weren't expecting anyone. A clean-shaven man in his 40s stood there, pressed polo and slacks too formal for Tuesday morning. He smiled with all his teeth. Mrs. Santiago? Mr. Santiago? I'm Marlon Dela Cruz, Golden Care Facilitations. Your children arranged this visit. I blinked. Our children? Yes, ma'am. He lifted a leather folder. They reached out last week, concerned about your support. During this difficult time, I coordinate care services, household management. Thomas appeared beside me. We didn't ask for services. Marlon's smile held. Your children took the initiative. They know asking for help is hard. His eyes swept our dim hallway, the unopened mail. May I come in? Just a few minutes. I was tired. Tired of cold, silence, phone calls that never came. Here was someone our children supposedly sent to help. All right, I said, stepping aside. Thomas hesitated, radiating unease, but too polite to argue. He stepped back. We sat in the living room, Marlon on the couch with his folder, Thomas and I in Mila's old armchairs. Marlon spoke quickly, pulling out forms with highlighted sections. Basic intake form, he said. This one authorizes coordination with banks and utilities, purely administrative. Our banks? Thomas said slowly. Standard procedure. Can't arrange automatic payments without access. I didn't understand, but I was so tired. 20 minutes later, Marlon left with 2 signed forms, promising to return Friday. I watched his car pull smoothly from our driveway. That night, I sat at the kitchen table again. On a pharmacy receipt, I wrote, "The man with too many papers arrived today." He smiled like someone who practices in mirrors. I folded it into the bowl. Thomas sat across from me, staring at his hands. If they were so worried, why didn't they just call? I had no answer. Without speaking it aloud, we decided to watch Marlon closely. Be polite, observe. We had no idea what we'd just let through the door. The knock came before I'd finished breakfast. Same confident rhythm, 3 sharp taps. Thomas looked up from his scrambled eggs. Already? I wiped my hands on my apron and opened the door. Marlon stood there in a different polo, same practiced smile, briefcase in hand. Good morning, Mrs. Santiago. Ready for onboarding? Onboarding? Just a quick review. Your children want everything streamlined. He stepped inside without waiting. I glanced at Thomas, who set down his fork slowly and followed us into the living room. Marlon settled onto the couch, pulling out folders thick with papers. He spread bank statements across the coffee table. Our bank statements, ones I hadn't seen in months. Where did you get those? Thomas asked quietly. Your children forwarded them, part of the coordination process. My chest tightened. Carlo had access to our accounts from when he helped us set up online banking years ago, but we'd never discussed sharing statements with strangers. Marlon's finger traced a highlighted column. Your pension deposits are consistent, but utility payments are irregular. We'll automate that. We pay our bills, Thomas said. Of course you do. Marlon's tone was patient, patronizing. But automation prevents lapses. At your age, one missed payment can trigger complications. At your age? The phrase sat in the room like smoke. He pulled out another document, this one stamped with official seals. Now, your children requested a power of attorney transfer, purely administrative. This allows me to manage routine affairs so you're not burdened with paperwork. I stared at the signatures at the bottom. One was supposedly mine. The loop of the L was wrong, too wide, too confident. Mine always cramped at the end. I didn't sign this, I said softly. Marlon's smile didn't waver. You signed the intake form yesterday, remember? This is the procedural follow-through. Your children pre-approved it. Thomas leaned forward. We need to speak with them first. Of course, but the timeline is tight. We're scheduling medical evaluations next week to prove you can remain at home safely. Prove? I echoed. Standard protocol for elder care coordination. A doctor assesses cognitive and physical capacity. It protects you from any future claims of neglect. The walls felt closer. This man, in our home for the second time, was already talking about medical tests and future claims. We're fine, I said. I'm sure you are, but documentation is everything. He packed up the papers. I'll handle scheduling. You just focus on yourselves. He left with another reminder to keep Friday open. I stood at the window, watching his car disappear. Thomas sat at the table, silent. After a long moment, he began sorting through the pile of mail we'd been ignoring: condolence cards, bills, advertisements. He stopped, held up an envelope. "This one's from Carlo." I recognized the blue airmail paper. "When did that arrive?" "Last week, I think." He turned it over. The flap was loose, resealed with cheap glue. "Lilia, someone opened this." My stomach dropped. "Maybe the post office." "No." His engineer's precision kicked in. "Look at the glue pattern. This was steamed open and resealed." We stared at each other. That afternoon, I sat at the kitchen table with a receipt from the pharmacy. My hand shook as I wrote. A bird woke in the room it once felt safe in. The windows were closed, the door, too. It didn't remember who shut them. I folded the paper into the bowl. Thomas returned from his study with a small notebook, the kind he used to log repair schedules. "We need proof before we confront him. Dates, contradictions, everything." How do we even start? We watch. We write it down. We don't sign anything else. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Medical assessors scheduled for tomorrow, 2 p.m. Please have ID ready." Marlon. I showed Thomas. His jaw tightened. That night, I lay beside him in the dark, listening to the house settle. He shifted every few minutes, unable to rest. "Thomas? What if we can't prove anything?" He didn't answer right away. Then quietly, "We will." But neither of us believed it yet. Morning sunlight poured through the kitchen window, harsh and unforgiving. It lit up the stacks of old newspapers Thomas had been meaning to recycle, the potted plant I'd forgotten to water, the scuff marks on the baseboards from when Mila was small and dragged her toy chest everywhere. Marlon stood in the doorway, surveying it all with a clipboard. "These newspapers are a fire hazard," he said, not looking up. "And the clutter creates fall risks." "We know where everything is," I said. "That's not the standard we're measuring against." He moved into the living room, nudging the coffee table aside with his foot. "Pathways need to be wider for emergency access." Thomas stood. "We didn't ask you to rearrange our furniture." Marlon smiled that patient, terrible smile. "I'm not rearranging. I'm optimizing. You'll thank me when the assessors arrive." He shifted the couch 6 inches to the left, pushed Thomas's reading chair toward the wall. The room suddenly felt like it belonged to someone else. "Now," Marlon said, pulling out a laminated sheet. "Let's begin the mobility assessment. Mrs. Santiago, I'll need you to stand and walk from here to the hallway, turn and return. I'll be timing your gait and balance." My hands felt cold. "Right now?" "Standard protocol. The assessors will do the same tomorrow, but I want a baseline." I stood slowly. My knees ached. They always did in the morning, but I steadied myself against the armrest. "No assistance," Marlon said sharply. "We need to see unassisted mobility." Thomas moved toward me anyway. Marlon stepped between us. "Sir, if you interfere, it invalidates the test." I took a breath and started walking. The floor felt uneven, though I knew it wasn't. Marlon's pen scratched against the clipboard. Halfway to the hallway, he called out, "Faster, please. Normal walking pace." I tried to speed up. My foot caught on the edge of the rug. the same rug that had been there for 30 years, and I stumbled. Thomas shouted, "Stop this!" Marlon's voice cut through. "Continue, Mrs. Santiago." I caught myself on the wall, breathing hard. My vision blurred with frustration, fear, humiliation. One of my receipt stories slipped from my pocket and fluttered to the floor. That's when I heard her. "Mrs. Santiago?" A woman's voice, soft but firm. I looked up. Ivy stood in the doorway, her hand already reaching out. She wore a faded blue cardigan and held an envelope. Rent, probably. She must have come down from the garage apartment. Her hand touched my elbow, steadying me without taking over. "Easy. I've got you." "Ma'am, this is a private assessment," Marlon started. Ivy ignored him. She guided me gently back toward the couch, her grip warm and certain. Then she bent down and picked up the fallen receipt. She glanced at it, paused, read it aloud, quietly. A bird woke in the room it once felt safe in. The windows were closed. The door, too. It didn't remember who shut them. Her voice trembled on the last word. I stared at her. No one had ever read my stories aloud before. No one had treated them like they mattered. "Excuse me," Marlon said, louder now. "You need to leave." Ivy looked at him for the first time. Her expression didn't change, but something in her posture straightened. "I'm a tenant. I have a right to be in common areas of the property. This is a medical evaluation. This is their living room." She folded the receipt carefully and handed it back to me. "And Mrs. Santiago is clearly distressed." Marlon's jaw tightened. He closed his clipboard. "I'll file my report based on what I observed. The formal assessment proceeds tomorrow at 2. He left without another word. The silence he left behind felt different, breathable. Ivy stood there, unsure. "I'm sorry if I overstepped. I saw you fall and—" "Thank you," I whispered. Thomas stepped forward, his voice steady for the first time all morning. "Would you like some tea?" Ivy blinked. "I don't want to intrude." "You're not," I said quickly. "Please, stay." She hesitated, then nodded. I moved toward the kitchen, legs still shaking. Thomas followed. Ivy walked behind us, her presence somehow making the house feel less like a trap. As I filled the kettle, I glanced back at her. She was looking at the receipt again, her fingers tracing the edge of the paper, like it was something precious. The knock came before 7, soft enough I nearly missed it. Thomas looked up from his coffee. "Marlon?" "Too polite," I said. Ivy stood on the porch, holding a cloth-covered basket, smelling of warm yeast, butter, sugar. "I baked pandesal," she said. "You should eat before anyone evaluates you." My throat tightened. When had someone last thought of us like that? Inside, she unveiled golden rolls still steaming. Thomas reached for one without waiting, bit in, closed his eyes. "My mother used to make these." Ivy smiled. "Mine too." We ate slowly around the table. No rushing, no phones. The morning felt like before everything broke. After breakfast, Ivy glanced around. "May I move things? Not like he did, in a way that might help." I nodded. She walked my mobility test path, noting where I'd stumbled, shifted the rug so its edge didn't catch, moved the lamp closer to Thomas's chair, adjusted the coffee table to clear a wider path without emptying the room. When she finished, the house still looked like ours, but safer. She sat beside me. The stories on the receipts, Do you keep them somewhere? Heat rose in my face. They're just bits. Nothing important. They're beautiful, Ivy said firmly. They matter. But they're so small, so easy to lose. Do you have a box? I didn't. Thomas brought shoeboxes from the closet. Together they cut one down, reinforced the corners, lined it with fabric from Ivy's sewing kit. I gathered my stories from drawers, nightstand, coat pockets. More than I'd realized. Dozens. Each a moment I'd needed to hold. We placed them carefully inside. I was smoothing the last receipt when the front door rattled. Marlon let himself in with the key we'd never given him. Good morning. Then he saw Ivy. His smile thinned. Ms. Ramos, you're here again? I brought breakfast, Ivy said evenly. Marlon set down his briefcase. Outside interference in your care plan could jeopardize the entire support structure. She's not interfering, I said. She's a tenant, not family, not medical personnel. Her presence raises liability concerns. Something snapped. Maybe the Pandasal. Maybe the box Thomas built. Maybe how Ivy read my story like it mattered. I met Marlon's eyes. Ivy is family, in the ways that matter. Thomas nodded. Marlon's jaw tightened. I'll note that. The assessors arrive at 2. Please ensure the environment is appropriate. He left. Ivy exhaled shakily. I'm sorry, I didn't mean... You didn't, I said. She pulled out a small folded card. My grandmother taught me this, for when things feel too heavy. She showed me how to breathe, slow counts, hands on ribs, feeling the air move. Simple, almost too simple. But after 3 breaths, my shoulders dropped. Thomas watched. You never rush us. Ivy blinked. Why would I? Our children do. Marlon does. Everyone acts like we're slow. Broken. You're not broken, Ivy said. You're just being yourselves. That night, after the assessors left with their clipboards and condescending smiles, I wrote a new story. A woman arrived carrying bread and light. She didn't ask permission to help. She simply saw what was needed and made it so. The room remembered warmth. I placed the receipt in the box. Thomas had labeled it in his neat engineer's print, Lilia's Stories. The box sat on the shelf beside his old notebooks, visible and safe. For the first time in months, I slept without waking. The doorbell rang at 8:15, too early for visitors, too precise for chance. Thomas set down his coffee. Marlon. I nodded. My stomach had known before my brain caught up. This time Marlon brought company. 2 people in business casual carrying identical leather portfolios. A woman with severe glasses. A man who wouldn't meet our eyes. Good morning, Marlon said. This won't take long. Just finalizing the arrangements we discussed. We didn't discuss arrangements, Thomas said. Marlon smiled. Polite, patient. The kind of smile that makes you doubt your own memory. Of course you did. Last week, when you agreed to the power of attorney transfer. He opened his briefcase, extracted a thick document. Everything's been processed through proper channels. He laid the papers on our kitchen table like a treaty. I stared at the signature line. My name, written in ink that looked almost like mine. Almost. I didn't sign that, I said. Mrs. Santiago, I understand this process can be confusing. I didn't sign it. Thomas leaned closer, squinting at his own signature. His hand went still. Neither did I. The woman with glasses stepped forward. I witnessed both signatures personally. Everything was executed according to legal standards. The man nodded without speaking. Marlon tapped the document. See? Properly witnessed, properly notarized. Your children approved the arrangement remotely. It's all documented. Show me where we signed, Thomas demanded. Marlon pointed. There, my name in script that curled too loosely. Thomas's printed in letters that leaned left when his always slanted right. My engineering husband had written his name the same way for 60 years. Muscle memory doesn't lie. These aren't ours, Thomas said. Mr. Santiago, I understand you're experiencing some memory difficulties. My memory is fine. The medical assessments suggest otherwise. Heat crawled up my neck. We never consented to this. Marlon's patience cracked slightly. Mrs. Santiago, your children requested professional oversight. The state approved. The paperwork is valid. Fighting this will only create unnecessary complications. The front door opened. Ivy stepped inside carrying grocery bags, keys still in hand. She froze, reading the room instantly. I'm sorry. I didn't realize you had company. Ms. Ramos, Marlon's voice hardened. This is a private legal matter. Of course. Ivy set down the bags. But if legal documents are being executed on the property, I'll need copies. Tenant safety compliance requires documentation of any changes affecting household authority. Marlon blinked. That's not... It's in the Municipal Rental Code, Ivy said calmly. Section 12. If the homeowner's legal status changes, documented residents have a right to notification, for safety purposes. I'd never heard of such a rule. Neither had Marlon, judging by his expression, but he was too confident to admit uncertainty. Fine. He gestured to the woman with glasses, who reluctantly fed the document into a small portable scanner. The copy emerged blurry, barely legible. Ivy accepted it without complaint. Thank you. She stood quietly beside the table, her phone in her hand, angling it casually toward the papers still spread before us. Click, click. So subtle I almost missed it. Marlon gathered his documents. Everything's in order. I'll be in touch regarding next steps. Property appraisal, financial restructuring, medication management. We don't need medication management, Thomas said. The assessors disagree. Good day. He left with his witnesses, the door closing too firmly behind them. Silence filled the kitchen like water rising. My hands started shaking. I gripped the table edge, but the tremor spread up my arms, into my shoulders. Lilia. He forged our signatures. My voice cracked. He walked in here and forged them, and those people lied. Ivy knelt beside my chair. Breathe, like yesterday. Slow. I couldn't. Lilia, look at me. I met her. I met eyes. In, 4 counts. I tried. Out, 4 counts. The shaking slowed. Thomas sat heavily. What do we do? Ivy looked at the blurry photocopy, then at her phone. We sort this out, 1 page at a time. How? My voice barely worked. She zoomed in on one of her photos, the signature line crisp and clear. These aren't your signatures, Ivy said. Look, your handwriting slants right. This slants left. Thomas writes with sharp angles. These are rounded. Thomas leaned in. You're right. Marlon gave me proof of forgery without realizing it. Ivy's jaw set. We take this to someone who can actually help. Who? I whispered. I don't know yet, but we'll find them. She squeezed my hand. 1 page at a time. I woke to ginger tea's scent drifting through the house. Ivy had let herself in, arranging 3 mismatched chairs on the veranda, thermos and cups waiting. "I thought we could have a meeting," she said, "about what happens next." Thomas appeared, still in his robe. "Is everything all right?" "We need a plan." We sat as morning light filtered through the jacaranda tree. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was shrinking. "I stayed up reading about Golden Care Facilitations," Ivy said. "They've targeted elderly homeowners before, forged documents, pushed through guardianship petitions." She pulled folded papers from her bag. 3 other families, same tactics. My stomach turned. How many people? At least a dozen on record. Probably more unreported. Thomas read the papers, his jaw tightening. "We need to document everything," Ivy said. "Every visit, every conversation, every signature he requests." "I've been writing the stories," I said quietly. "They're evidence. But we need them organized, dated, cross-referenced." "I can do that," Thomas said. We both looked at him. "I'll keep a timeline. Dates, times, what he said." He straightened. "Engineering is tracking variables. This is the same." Ivy handed him a notebook. "Start with yesterday." Thomas's pen moved immediately. "I'll dig into Marlon's background," Ivy continued. "Licenses, complaints, court filings. If there's a pattern, we'll find it." "Why are you doing this?" I asked. Ivy paused. "My husband died 3 years ago. His family said I had no claim because we'd only been married 5 years. They wanted everything." "What happened?" Thomas asked. I had documents, receipts, letters, small things I'd saved. She met my eyes. "Your stories aren't just grief, Lilia. They're proof you were here." My throat tightened. "Then we start today," Thomas said. By afternoon, the veranda had transformed into a war room. Thomas recorded every Marlon interaction in engineer's shorthand. Ivy highlighted complaint printouts. I gathered receipts, reading them aloud so Thomas could log details. June 4th. The man with too many papers asks about our medications. We don't take any. He writes something anyway. Thomas wrote, June 4th, M, asks re, meds. We have none. Records false. Info. June 7th. The bird in the room it used to feel safe in. Furniture moved without asking. June 7th. M. Rearranges furniture. No consent. Ivy photographed each receipt, creating digital backup. When Marlon arrived that evening, unannounced, he found us together, tea warm, notebooks open. He stopped in the doorway. "Good evening, Mr. Dela Cruz," Ivy said. His eyes moved from her to Thomas's notebook to my receipts. I wasn't expecting company. "Ivy lives here," I replied, "in the garage apartment, not the main house." "She's family," Thomas said. Marlon's smile thinned. "I need to speak with you privately." "Anything you say can be said in front of Ivy," I said. His jaw tightened. "Mrs. Santiago, I'm trying to help. Then help us understand why our signatures don't match your filed documents." Silence. "The process can be confusing." "We're not confused," Thomas said. Marlon's mask cracked. "I'll return when you're more cooperative." He left without another word. "He's rattled," Ivy exhaled. "Good," Thomas muttered. I looked at the growing stack of stories. "Do you really think these will help?" I asked quietly. Ivy leaned forward. "They're the most powerful thing you have, not just receipts, a chronicle of everything he tried to hide." Thomas closed his notebook. Then we keep going. I nodded, reaching for the next receipt, fingers trembling only slightly. 1 page at a time, Ivy said. For the first time since Mila's funeral, I believed something might change. Marlon knocked at 7:30 before we'd finished breakfast. I opened the door. He held a manila folder, smile too wide. "Good morning, Mrs. Santiago. Important information." Thomas appeared behind me, still chewing toast. Marlon stepped inside uninvited, pulling out a crisp letter. "I'm scheduling a cognitive evaluation for Mr. Santiago, Thursday, 9 a.m. at the Municipal Health Office." My stomach dropped. "That's 3 days," I said. "The court prefers expedited processing." "Court?" Ivy emerged from the hallway. "What filing?" "Miss Ramos, this is private." "Not when you mention court proceedings here." She set down her laundry basket. 3 days' notice is insufficient. The appointment is filed as guardianship preparation, non-negotiable. The word guardianship hung like smoke. "You're filing for guardianship?" I whispered. "Precautionary measures to protect your interests should Mr. Santiago's condition decline." "His condition is fine," I said. "That's what the evaluation determines." He placed the letter down. "Failure to attend suggests non-compliance. The court takes safety seriously." Marlon left. Ivy grabbed the letter. "He's accelerating." "Can he?" Thomas asked. "If he's filed preliminary paperwork, yes. But this evaluator isn't a neuropsychologist, just a general practitioner at a Golden Care clinic." "They're stacking the deck," I said. "Probably." Ivy looked at Thomas. "But we can prepare." That afternoon, Ivy spread assessment questions across the table. "What day is it?" "Tuesday," Thomas answered. "Count backwards from 100 by sevens." 100, 93, 86. They worked through memory tests, pattern recognition, arithmetic. Thomas stumbled occasionally, but Ivy reassured him. "You're doing well. Stay calm. Ask for clarification. Don't rush." After an hour, Thomas excused himself. Ivy joined me. "He'll be fine." "What if he isn't?" "Then we document everything. But he's sharp when not rushed or intimidated. Marlon's betting on pressure." I pulled out a receipt and pen. "Another story?" Ivy asked. I wrote quickly. A fox circles an unattended coop at dusk. The hens cluck, warning Piao's no one hears. The farmer has gone to town, trusting his latch. But the fox noticed it rusting weeks ago. He knows patience, the farmer's schedule, which hen is slowest. All he needs is one careless moment. Ivy read over my shoulder. "This isn't just a story," she said. "No. It's documentation of intent. If we need to show predatory behavior, this describes exactly what he's doing." Will anyone believe a grocery receipt metaphor? Paired with Thomas's timeline and my research? Yes. Keep writing everything you notice. That night, my phone buzzed. Email from Marlon. Urgent. Evaluation compliance notice. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Santiago, failure to attend Thursday's evaluation may result in emergency safety measures, including temporary removal from your residence pending court review. Please confirm receipt. Regards, Marlon Dela Cruz. Thomas went pale. They can't just remove us. If he convinces a judge you're unsafe, I'm not unsafe. Ivy read the email, jaw tight. He's threatening you. Can he follow through? Thomas asked. With the right judge and fabricated urgency, maybe, but he's showing his hand. Desperation. He wants you scared into compliance. It's working, I admitted. Ivy sat. Then we stay calm. Thomas goes, performs well. We document everything. Questions, tone, irregular procedures. If they try anything illegal, we challenge. What if I fail? Thomas whispered. You won't, Ivy said firmly. But I saw the fear in his eyes. Tomorrow, I would write another story about a man who remembers everything that matters, even when the world insists he's forgotten. I barely slept. By 5:30, I gave up, dressing in the dark while Thomas snored softly beside me. Ivy knocked at 6. Coffee ready? Making it now. We didn't talk much in the kitchen. Some mornings don't need words. Thomas appeared at 7, dressed in his good blue polo. He sat, sipped coffee, touched nothing else. Eat something, I said. My stomach won't. Ivy slid a banana across. Just half. He peeled it slowly, mechanical. At 8:15, Marlon texted. Arriving 8:30. Ivy grabbed her purse. I'm coming. You're not listed. Emergency contact. Tenant clause requires my presence during official assessments. This isn't on site. Close enough. Let him argue. Marlon arrived exactly at 8:30, expression tight, seeing Ivy. Miss Ramos, this is private. I'm their emergency contact. You're a tenant? With documented safety compliance responsibility. She held up her phone. Lease amendment, signed last month. His jaw worked. Fine. Stay silent. The drive took 20 minutes. Marlon drove fast, braking hard. Thomas gripped the door handle. Ivy placed her hand over his. Breathe with me, in 4 counts, out 6. Marlon's eyes flicked to the mirror, irritated. The evaluation room smelled like disinfectant. Dr. Fernandez, silver-framed glasses, shook Thomas's hand gently. Mr. Santiago, standard questions. Take your time. She gestured to a chair. I took the wall seat, notebook ready. Ivy stood near the door. Marlon positioned himself beside the desk. What is today's date? Thursday, November 14th. Current president? Thomas answered correctly. Count backwards from 100 by 7s. 100, 93, 86, 79, 72. Mr. Santiago, Marlon interrupted. What did you have for breakfast? Thomas blinked. Coffee, a banana, half. You seem uncertain. Dr. Fernandez glanced at Marlon. I'll handle the questions. I'm clarifying. Procedural consistency requires I conduct this assessment. Her tone stayed polite, firm. Marlon leaned back, arms folded. Dr. Fernandez continued. Repeat these words. Apple, table, penny. Apple, table, penny. Spell world backwards. DLROW. She moved through memory exercises, spatial reasoning, arithmetic. Thomas answered steadily, occasionally pausing but never panicking. Marlon shifted. Doctor, does he seem confused about his living situation? I haven't asked that yet. But it's relevant, Ivy spoke quietly. Dr. Fernandez, is it standard for third parties to prompt questions during cognitive assessments? Dr. Fernandez removed her glasses. No, Marlon's face flushed. I'm his designated. You're an observer. Please let me complete the evaluation without interruption. Silence. Thomas completed the assessment 20 minutes later. Dr. Fernandez made notes, then looked up. Mr. Santiago performed within normal cognitive range, no indicators of incapacity. Marlon's expression went flat. You'll file that officially? Of course. Ivy stepped forward. May we request copies of all test notes? Dr. Fernandez hesitated, glancing at Marlon. For our records, Ivy added. Procedural transparency. That's highly unusual. It's our right under Republic Act 1173, data privacy. Dr. Fernandez studied Ivy, then nodded. I'll prepare copies. Marlon stood abruptly. This is unnecessary. It's documentation, Ivy said calmly. Unless there's something you'd prefer we didn't document. Dr. Fernandez printed the notes, handed them to Ivy. If you have concerns about irregular procedures, file a complaint with the licensing board. Marlon's jaw tightened. We're done here. The drive home was silent. Marlon dropped us at the curb, pulling away immediately. Thomas exhaled shakily. I did it. You did, Ivy said. Perfectly. Inside, Thomas sat heavily, grinning. I remembered everything. You were brilliant, I said. Ivy spread the test notes across the table. Now we have proof, official documentation contradicting any incapacity claim. Thomas touched the pages carefully. I proved I'm still here, he whispered. I kissed his forehead. You've always been here. The morning after the evaluation, I woke with purpose for the first time in months. Ivy arrived before 7 with folders and sticky tabs. We're organizing. Organizing what? Everything you've written, everything Thomas logged. We're building a case. Thomas appeared, already dressed. How do we start? Ivy spread folders across the kitchen table. 3 categories. What happened? Events, dates, actions. Who said what? Direct quotes, conversations. What felt wrong? Instinct, inconsistencies, lies. I stared at the shoeboxes stuffed with receipts. There are hundreds. Then we take it one story at a time. We worked through the morning. Ivy read each receipt aloud, while I confirmed dates and context. Thomas cross-referenced his notebook, matching my stories to his engineering-precise logs. This one, Ivy said, holding up a crumpled CVS receipt. The man who touches papers without asking, dated October 9th. That's when Marlon first went through our bank statements, I said. Thomas flipped pages. Confirmed. October 9th, 10:15 a.m. He requested statements claiming our children authorized review. No written proof provided. Ivy placed the receipt in the What Happened folder, adding a sticky note with Thomas's log entry number. We moved through dozens. My handwriting, cramped and hurried on odd scraps, suddenly became coherent when laid side by side. Lilia, Ivy said softly, look at this. She'd arranged 5 receipts in sequence. Each described Marlon's visits, his word choices, his escalating control. You documented everything, she said. Dates, times, what he said versus what the paperwork claimed. I didn't realize I was doing that. You were protecting yourself the only way you knew how. Thomas leaned closer. These match my notes exactly. Same contradictions. Ivy pulled out another receipt. He said our children signed, but the ink was fresh. November 2nd. Thomas checked his log. November 2nd. Marlon presented power of attorney documents. Signatures appeared recent, despite claim of prior authorization. Ink color inconsistent with our usual pens. See? Ivy tapped both pages. Your stories aren't just feelings, they're evidence. My throat tightened. For months, I'd thought I was only managing grief, writing to stay sane. I didn't know I was building proof. By afternoon, we had 3 thick folders. Ivy labeled each carefully, then transferred everything into a heavy-duty binder. This is your narrative, she said. Clear, documented, undeniable. Thomas touched the binder cover. It's real now. It was always real, Ivy said. Now it's just organized. The doorbell rang at 3. Marlon stood on the porch beside a thin man in a polo shirt holding a clipboard. Mrs. Santiago, this is Mr. Valdez, licensed property appraiser. Routine home safety assessment. I blocked the doorway. You didn't notify us. Email sent this morning. We didn't receive it. Technical error, perhaps. His smile stayed fixed. May we enter? Ivy appeared behind me, phone already recording. Good afternoon, Mr. Dela Cruz. For the record, today is November 16th, 3:07 p.m. You're requesting entry for what purpose? Marlon's smile faltered. Are you recording? Documenting, same as you. This is private property, which we occupy legally as tenants and owners. Transparency protects everyone, doesn't it? Mr. Valdez glanced between them, uncomfortable. Marlon recovered quickly. The appraisal ensures their home meets safety standards. Do you have written authorization from the homeowners? Ivy asked. My power of attorney, currently disputed pending legal review. Marlon's jaw tightened. I'm acting in their best interest. Then you won't mind being recorded. Silence. Mr. Valdez cleared his throat. Sir, if there's a dispute, perhaps we should reschedule with proper documentation. There's no dispute, Marlon said. There absolutely is, I said quietly. Marlon stared at me, surprised I'd spoken. You forged signatures, you manipulated paperwork, you lied about my children's involvement. My voice stayed steady. And we have proof. His expression went cold. Mrs. Santiago, unfounded accusations could be considered defamatory. Truth isn't defamation, Ivy said, still recording. Mr. Valdez stepped back. I'm not comfortable proceeding without clear authorization. Thank you for your time. He left quickly. Marlon lingered, eyes hard. You're making a mistake. No, I said. You did. He turned sharply and left. Inside, Thomas gripped the table. That felt good. It felt terrifying, I said. Both, Ivy agreed. But necessary. I sat, hands shaking, and pulled out a fresh receipt. The ledger of the living today, I've learned that the smallest truths, when gathered together, become undeniable. That what I thought was grief writing was actually witness keeping. That my voice, even when whispered onto scraps, still carries weight. We are building proof, not for revenge, for survival. I placed the receipt atop the binder. Ivy read it, eyes bright. Perfect. Thomas touched my shoulder. We have everything now. Almost, Ivy said. Now we need someone to hear it. The knock came early, before tea. A courier handed Thomas an envelope, official seal, heavy paper. Thomas's hands shook as he unfolded it. It's a petition. In the matter of guardianship, Lilia and Thomas Santiago. My legs weakened. Ivy arrived from the market, finding us frozen at the table. Marlon filed, Thomas said. Full guardianship. Court in 10 days. Ivy read carefully. Serious? but not hopeless. He's calling us incapable, I whispered. Mentally unfit. Claims aren't facts, Ivy corrected, organizing the pages. Vague medical assessment, property appraisal citing hazards, care plan conveniently placing you in a golden care facility. Conflict of interest, Thomas said. Exactly. We need legal help. Now. After 3 calls, Ivy found a legal aid office. Consultation set for tomorrow. None of us slept. Attorney Reyes worked above a laundromat. Small office, tired eyes, steady hands. She reviewed everything methodically. The forged power of attorney undermines his foundation. Can you prove it? I asked. Handwriting analysis takes time and money. Legal aid covers representation, but expert witnesses exceed our budget. My stomach dropped. However, she tapped my receipt stories. Contemporaneous documentation is powerful, not memories reconstructed for court, real-time records. Will that be enough? Thomas asked. Atty Reyes hesitated. Courts often favor petitioners. You must prove capacity. It's backward. But reality. So we're losing, I said. Not necessarily. Show the judge you're aware, organized, supported. You have a real chance. What do we need? Ivy asked. Testify. Both of you. In person. The judge needs to see you functioning. Thomas met my eyes. Fear reflected back. And resolve. We'll do it, I said. 5 evenings became quiet boot camp. Ivy color-coded the binder. Blue for financial discrepancies, yellow for violations, pink for my stories, green for Thomas's logs. Together they prove you're witnesses, not victims. Thomas rehearsed until confident. I practiced reading until my voice steadied. You're testifying, Ivy said. By the 4th night, I recited 3 stories without trembling. On the 6th evening, Ivy sat us on the porch. You're ready. Are we? I asked. You've documented everything, organized it, practiced. She looked between us. And you're not alone. Thomas gripped my hand, that engineer's certainty I'd relied on for decades. We appear together, he said. No matter what. I nodded. Together. Ivy smiled. Then let's show that judge who you are. The night before the hearing, Ivy appeared at our door with grocery bags. Sinigang, she announced, for courage. We should be reviewing, Thomas began. You will, after you eat something warm. She commandeered our small kitchen, chopping radish and tomatoes with practiced efficiency. The sour tamarind smell filled the house, sharp, comforting, alive. I hadn't realized how long it had been since someone cooked for us. We ate at the table, steam rising between us. My mother made this before every hard conversation, Ivy said. Said sourness clears the head. Does it work? I asked. You tell me tomorrow. Thomas smiled, small, but real. After dishes, Ivy spread the binder across the table. Final review. Lilia. Which stories are you reading? I'd marked 7, but my hands still trembled imagining the courtroom. 5, Atty Reyes had advised. Short, factual, emotional impact without melodrama. I chose carefully. The Man with Too Many Papers. Marlon's First Visit. The Bird Trapped in a Safe Room. The Forged POA. Furniture that moves itself. Coercion disguised as help. The Fox Circling the Coop. Property Appraisal. The Ledger of the Living. Our Decision to Fight. Good range, Ivy said. Chronological. Clear escalation. Thomas cross-referenced dates in his engineer's log. March 3rd, March 7th, March 10th, 14th, 21st. Every story matched a documented event. "The judge will see the pattern," Ivy said. I wanted to believe her. Ivy printed 3 extra sets, one for the judge, one for the court clerk, one backup. Then she pulled out her own pages. Witness statement, describing what I observed since moving in. She read aloud. I, Ivy Ramos, tenant of the Santiago property since February, have witnessed systematic coercion by Marlon de la Cruz. He arrived without invitation, manipulated documents, and dismissed the couple's questions. When I assisted Mrs. Santiago during a forced mobility test, he attempted to remove me, claiming tenants have no standing. His behavior reflects control, not care. Thomas nodded. Precise. Will they accept it? I asked. Atomy Reyes says yes. I'm an independent third party with no financial stake. You're risking your lease, I said quietly. Ivy met my eyes. You're risking your home. Compared to that, my lease is nothing. My throat tightened. My phone buzzed. Marlon. Judge prefers streamlined cases. Your appearance may complicate resolution. Consider waiving court attendance. I can represent your interests. I showed Thomas. He snorted. Represent his interests. Ivy leaned over. Don't reply. Let him wonder. I deleted the message. We sat in silence for a moment. Tomorrow, Thomas said. We walk in together. Together, I echoed. Ivy closed the binder. Then let's rest. Upstairs, I laid out my best blouse, cream-colored, pressed years ago for Mila's graduation. The memory stung, but I let it settle. She would want me to fight. Downstairs, I heard Thomas polishing his shoes, that slow, methodical rhythm I'd known for 60 years. Ivy knocked softly. Transportation confirmed. Van picks us up at 7:30. Courthouse opens at 8. Hearing at 9. You checked twice? Thomas called. 3 times, Ivy admitted. I smiled despite my nerves. We gathered briefly in the hallway. Sleep if you can, Ivy said. If not, rest anyway. Thomas nodded. We've done everything we can. More than Marlon expects, Ivy added. I touched the binder on the table. Our proof, our voices, our refusal to disappear quietly. Good night, I said. Good night, they answered. I climbed into bed beside Thomas, expecting sleeplessness, but exhaustion, or perhaps resolve, pulled me under. My last thought was simple. Tomorrow, we tell our story. And for the first time in months, that felt like enough. Morning light filtered through courthouse windows in pale, institutional bars, nothing like home. I gripped Thomas's arm, stepping from the van. Steady, he murmured. Ivy walked beside us, binder tucked like armor. The courthouse loomed, concrete columns, wide stairs designed to remind you how small you were. Mila brought me here once. We ate empanadas on those benches afterward. The memory felt impossibly distant. Marlon waited at the stairs in a crisp barong, expression arranged into sympathy. Lilia, Tomas, I'm glad you came. We came to speak for ourselves, I said quietly. His smile didn't waver. The process will be easier if you trust me. Judges appreciate cooperation. We appreciate honesty, Ivy said flatly. Marlon's eyes flicked toward her. Irritation masked quickly. Ms. Ramos, I didn't realize you'd be accompanying them. Witness, listed in the case file. His jaw tightened. Let's not make this adversarial, Then withdraw your petition, Thomas said. Marlon's expression shifted, colder. Unfortunately, the court process has begun. I nodded toward the doors. We should go inside. The hallway echoed with murmured conversations. Benches lined the walls, filled with waiting people. An old man in a wheelchair, his daughter crying softly. A woman my age clutching a rosary sitting alone. A couple whispering urgently with a man in a suit who looked disturbingly like Marlon. How many of us are here? How many fighting to keep what's ours? We weren't alone, but we also weren't unique. Mrs. Santiago? Atia Reyes approached, calm but focused. Simple blazer, worn leather briefcase suggesting years of cases like ours. How are you holding up? Nervous, I admitted. Good. Means you're taking this seriously. She glanced at Ivy's binder. Is that the documentation? Everything. Chronological, cross-referenced. Atia Reyes flipped through pages, eyebrows rising slightly. These micro-stories, dated? Specific? Yes, I wrote them as things happened. They're more than evidence. They're testimony in your own voice. She paused on one page. The man with too many papers. You wrote this the night he first visited. Yes. And the fox circling the coop when he brought the appraiser. That evening. Atia Reyes closed the binder carefully. We lead with your stories. Read them aloud. Let the judge hear your voice first, not Marlon's reports, your lived experience. Thomas frowned. Is that conventional? No, but conventional hasn't protected people like you from people like him. She nodded toward Marlon down the hall. Unconventional might be what we need. I looked at the binder. I'll read them. Atia Reyes smiled. Good. 5 stories. Thomas corroborates timeline. Ivy provides witness account. Then we show forged signatures alongside your handwriting samples. What will Marlon argue? Thomas asked. That you're confused, need protection, that your children requested his intervention. She met our eyes. But we have documentation proving otherwise. And we have you, present, coherent, fighting for yourselves. The intercom crackled. Case 473, Santiago Guardianship Petition, Courtroom C. My heart lurched. Ready? I wasn't, but I nodded. Thomas took my left hand. Ivy took my right. We walked toward the courtroom, 3 people who'd become family through necessity and choice. Marlon fell into step behind us, silent. The doors opened. Inside, the judge's bench loomed high. The witness stand waited. Here we go, Ivy whispered. We entered hand in hand, carrying our small stories into a system built for bigger ones. Judge Aquino looked weary, eyes that had seen these cases many times before. Case 473, Guardianship Petition for Lilia and Thomas Santiago. Marlon stood smoothly. Thank you, Your Honor. I sat beside Atty. Reyes, Thomas on my left, hands trembling around my binder. Marlon began with practiced ease. This petition concerns 2 vulnerable individuals in their 80s. They live in a deteriorating home without support. Their overseas children contacted Golden Care requesting professional oversight. He gestured toward us. Lovely people, but confusion has set in. Mrs. Santiago writes nonsensical fragments. Mr. Santiago struggles with daily tasks. They've refused necessary evaluations. Nonsensical fragments. My chest tightened. We attempted coordination, but a tenant, Ms. Ramos, interfered. For their safety, we recommend supervised guardianship and assisted living. Judge Aquino made notes. You've submitted cognitive assessments? Pending, Your Honor. Results remain inconclusive due to procedural complications. Complications? Interruptions during administration. Attorney Reyes leaned forward. We'll present testimony from the evaluator directly. Marlon outlined property appraisals, medical recommendations, financial irregularities, all delivered with concerned authority. Judge Aquino looked toward us. Mrs. Santiago, you understand this petition? I stood. Yes. A stranger wants to take my home and my voice. Your attorney mentioned documentation. Attorney Reyes stood. Mrs. Santiago will present first-hand accounts, written contemporaneously. I opened the binder, hands shaking. I wrote these stories to remember what was happening, tiny truths. I began reading. The Man with Too Many Papers, written 3 months ago. He arrived with folders whispering importance, talked about our children, names he shouldn't have known, said we'd agreed to help we never requested. Thomas asked how he got our address. The man smiled like it didn't matter. Silence filled the courtroom. The bird trapped in a room, written the next day. The bird knew every corner. Then someone moved the furniture. Familiar walls felt wrong. The bird beat wings against glass that used to be air. Judge Aquino leaned forward. I read more, each dated, each describing moments Marlon coerced or dismissed us. Attorney Reyes spoke gently. Mr. Santiago kept parallel logs. Thomas stood, notebook open. I logged every visit, dates, times, statements. March 7th, Marlon arrived unannounced. Claimed children, authorized power of attorney, refused proof. March 9th, brought unknown witnesses, pressured signatures. March 12th, scheduled evaluation without consent. Each entry matched my stories. Precision, confirming poetry. Attorney Reyes addressed the bench. Dr. Fernandez is available via video. The screen flickered. After swearing in, Attorney Reyes asked, Did Mr. Dela Cruz attempt to influence your evaluation? Yes. He interrupted with leading questions to confuse the patient. He suggested I expedite findings for immediate guardianship, inappropriate and unethical. Your actual findings? Age-appropriate cognitive function. No evidence supporting incapacity. Marlon's jaw tightened. Judge Aquino's expression shifted. Mr. Dela Cruz, you stated results were inconclusive. Marlon stood quickly. I was relaying preliminary. Dr. Fernandez testified otherwise. There may have been miscommunication or misrepresentation. Mrs. Santiago, did you sign authorization documents? No, Your Honor. Mr. Santiago? No. Attorney Reyes presented 2 pages. Forged signatures compared with authenticated samples. Judge Aquino examined both. Long silence. Mr. Dela Cruz, are your credentials current with social welfare? Marlon hesitated. Yes, Your Honor. I'm ordering verification. This petition is dismissed pending investigation into fraud and elder exploitation. Power of attorney voided immediately. You're prohibited from contact with the Santiagos, referred to the prosecutor's office. The gavel struck. We were free. The house looked smaller when we returned. Not in a bad way, just honest. Ivy unlocked the door first, gesturing for us to enter. Careful on the threshold. Marlon moved the rug yesterday. I stepped inside, noticing the faint smell of disinfectant he'd insisted made the place presentable. Thomas paused in the doorway. We won? We did, I said quietly. He nodded, setting down his jacket with ceremony, like marking the moment. Ivy surveyed the living room. Let's get his nonsense out of here. Medical equipment cluttered the corners, a blood pressure cuff attached to a chair I'd never agreed to use. Pill organizers labeled with times I didn't recognize. A mobility walker blocking the hallway. Brand new, unnecessary, humiliating. He installed all this while we were out? I asked. Ivy nodded grimly. 2 days ago. Said it was standard protocol. Thomas lifted the walker, examining it. We didn't need this. No, I agreed. But it made us look like we did. We began dismantling the setup piece by piece. Ivy unplugged monitors. I folded the borrowed wheelchair that had sat empty for weeks, a prop in Marlon's theatre. Thomas gathered pill bottles, reading labels aloud. Half these aren't even prescribed to us. Probably staged for photographs, Ivy said flatly. Evidence he was managing care. The manipulation felt heavier now that we understood it. I cleared the coffee table next, removing pamphlets about memory care facilities and end-of-life planning Marlon had left for consideration. My hands trembled as I tossed them into a bag. Thomas touched my shoulder. You okay? I will be, I said, once this place feels like ours again. We worked in silence for a while, each small act reclaiming territory. Ivy moved furniture back to positions we'd chosen years ago. The couch angled toward the garden window, the reading chair near the lamp, the side table within reach of Thomas's favorite spot. Better? She asked. Much. By late afternoon, the living room looked almost normal. Thomas disappeared into the garage, returning with tools. The light above Ivy's room is out. I'm fixing it. Ivy glanced up, surprised. You don't have to. Yes, I do. You shouldn't walk those stairs in the dark. He climbed carefully, replacing the bulb with steady hands. When the light flickered on, warm and reliable, Ivy smiled. Thank you. Should have done it months ago, Thomas muttered, descending. We sat together on the veranda as dusk gathered. Ivy poured tea, not the rushed, anxious kind we'd been drinking for weeks, but slow, deliberate comfort. What happens next? I asked. Thomas sipped thoughtfully. We keep living, on our terms. Ivy nodded. And I'll move out as soon as I find something nearby. I don't want to overstay. No, I interrupted. She blinked. No? You're not overstaying. You're staying. Thomas leaned forward. Downstairs. Properly. Not squeezed into that garage room. Ivy's expression shifted, caught between hope and hesitation. I can't impose. You're not imposing, I said firmly. You're family in the ways that matter. I'd said those words to Marlon once, defiant and uncertain. Now I meant them with my whole heart. Ivy's eyes glistened. You mean it? We do, Thomas confirmed. That garage room isn't safe long-term. The downstairs guest room is empty. Has been since Mila. He stopped, throat tight. I finished gently. Since Mila stayed there during chemo, we haven't touched it. But it's time. Ivy wiped her eyes quickly. I'd help with rent, utilities, groceries. We'll figure it out, Thomas said. Together. She nodded, voice thick. Then yes, I'd be honored. That evening, we began reorganizing. Ivy measured the guest room for her sewing table. Thomas sketched possible furniture arrangements on scrap paper, engineers' precision meeting domestic warmth. I stood in the doorway, watching them collaborate. The house had felt like a battlefield for so long. Territory to defend, evidence to gather, space constantly invaded. Now it was becoming something else. A shared home, a chosen family. A place where 3 people who'd each lost too much could rebuild something sturdy and kind. Ivy caught my gaze. "What are you thinking?" I smiled. "That I should write this down." "Another story?" "Yes, but a different kind." I pulled out a fresh receipt, habit, and paused. Then I set it aside, reaching instead for my old notebook. Some stories deserved more than scraps. 3 weeks since the courthouse, and the house no longer held its breath. I woke to Ivy's sewing machine humming from her room, Marlon's folders gone. The rhythmic whir was steady, purposeful, nothing like his sharp document shuffling or curt phone tapping. This sound belonged. I stretched, feeling the small ache from sleeping through the night instead of jerking awake constantly. Thomas was brewing coffee. "Morning," he said, pouring without asking. "Morning." We sat at our table, cleared of medical forms and suspicious contracts, and I opened my notebook. A real one, fabric covered with pages that didn't tear. "How many stories?" Thomas asked. 47. Ivy thinks we should organize by theme, memory, autonomy, family. She's right, I sipped. "You don't mind I'm writing about it all? People should know. What happened to us happens to others. Maybe your words help someone see it coming." I hadn't thought of it as larger than our survival. My stories weren't just receipts anymore. They were evidence. A map through coercion the others might need. Ivy joined us mid-morning, laptop ready. We'd started this routine 2 weeks ago. I read aloud, Ivy typed. Thomas fact-checked dates against his engineering logs. 3 people with no publishing experience building a memoir from grocery receipt fragments. But it worked. Today's story: the man who rearranged truth like furniture. I described when Marlon moved our couch without asking, claiming it was a fall hazard when he'd just wanted the room institutional for photographs. Ivy's fingers flew. "You captured his fake concern perfectly." Thomas circled a date. April 9th, same day he brought the appraiser. "See? Every piece connects," Ivy said. "I never thought I could write a whole book." "You already did," she said gently. "Just on receipts first." Around noon, a knock interrupted us. "That's Marco. I told him to come." Ivy stood. "Your grandson?" Thomas offered to teach him appliance repair. I raised an eyebrow. Thomas shrugged. "Kid's 13. Should know how things work." A lanky boy entered carrying a broken toaster. "Lola said you could fix anything," Marco said shyly. Thomas stood, energized. "Let's see." They disappeared into the garage, voices rising in patient instruction. Ivy watched, eyes soft. "He's been asking about you since the hearing. Wanted to meet the couple who beat the system." "We didn't beat it. We just refused to disappear." "That's the same thing." The phone rang. My son, calling from abroad. "Mum, how are things?" His voice cautious, almost guilty. He'd called twice since the hearing, brief and uncomfortable. "We're well. Busy. I'm writing a memoir." Silence. "A memoir?" "Yes, about everything. Ivy's helping." "Ivy? Our tenant. She's family now." Pause. "That's good, Mum." "We do." The conversation ended politely, emptily. I returned to the veranda. "The kids?" Ivy asked. "Checking boxes. making sure we're alive so they don't feel guilty. Does it hurt? Not as much. They don't hold power over me anymore. Truth. My children's absence once felt like abandonment sharp enough to scar. Now just distance, a fact I'd grieved and released. I had Thomas, Ivy, Marco's laughter from the garage. Enough. 2 days later, I finished the final story. The smallest words that saved us, not about Marlon at all. About Ivy reading my receipt story aloud, voice steady. Thomas saying, "We'll figure it out together." The judge asking, "Mrs. Santiago, would you like to read your account?" Small words, ordinary moments, but they'd held us upright. That evening we gathered on the veranda, our ritual. I held the notebook open. "Can I read you something?" "Of course," Thomas said. I began. My voice wavered, then steadied. I read about Ivy's hand on my elbow, Thomas's logs, the binder we'd built, page by page, truth by truth, the courthouse hallway, the moment the judge voided Marlon's claim. Coming home, realizing we weren't victims, we were architects of something new. Silence settled warm. Thomas squeezed my hand. "That's the one." Ivy nodded. "That's your ending." "Our ending," I corrected. "Not just my story. Ours." 3 strangers turned allies, turned family, bound not by blood, but by courage, evidence, and stubborn refusal to be erased. I closed the notebook. Ivy poured tea. Thomas watched the garden. And for the first time in years, the house felt exactly like what it was. Home.